Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Cake PHP. Are you all having a good time? Great. So let's start. The most hated topic of all developers, testing. Like testing for people who hate testing. That's what the title of the topic is, right? So let's do a simple show of hands first. So how many of you present here actually write tests? Oh, that's a good number actually. And how many of you actually hate writing them? Yeah. So this is like general tendency with all developers. We write tests, but we really hate writing them. We write them just for the sake of writing them. It feels like it takes all the passion from us. It feels like we didn't achieve anything. It really feels unproductive. Like I'm a developer. Why the hell am I testing? Like the whole passion of developer is sucked all the way down to the bottom by these tests. So that's what it feels when you start as a developer writing test. And we don't want to be this guy, right? So this was an authentic review about this mountain on TripAdvisor, that this mountain is too steep and too high to climb. That's why I'm giving it only 1 star. That's it. What's the what is the error by the mountain? Like I'm high, so why should I give one star review? So we don't want to be this guy. We don't want to hate tests like this. We need to love tests. Tests are an integral part of every process in the developer's life. So we need to be very efficient in writing tests. And not only efficient, we also need to love them. It needs to be fun as development. It doesn't need to be hating all the way around, right? So what this talk is not about, it's not about syntax for tests. I'm not going to explain you like this is how you write test or these are the assertions that are available and stuff like that. No, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm also not going to explain you like what are mocks, fakes, stubs, dummies, factories. There are a lot of testing jargons in the testing community, but this is not what I'm going to do today. I'm not going to explain you all these things. I'm not going into BDD versus TDD stuff or comparison of testing frameworks like PHP unit or Codeception or stuff like that. But what I'm going to concentrate on is how to approach TDD with fun. The fun part in testing is missing these days. We don't really feel like we should write tests. So that's what I'm going to concentrate now today, like bringing that fun back to writing tests. So before going into bringing that fun back, let's understand the classic TDD loop that we all know. This is the TDD loop that we all know and we all are familiar with. Like the first time when you are going to write test, this is what you're bombarded with. Like you write a failing test, you make it pass, you refactor, and then you again write the next failing test, you make it pass, you refactor. Just loop into this round and round and round. This is what the general notion is when we are always introduced to writing tests. And the most classic example that we all go through the first time we write test is about the calculator class. Like this is the de facto standard for getting into testing. You need to test a calculator. We all are creating calculators every day in our applications. So this is what a general calculator test looks like. So when we run this test, we get an error like class calculator is not found. And then we go and create a class calculator. But then we again run tests and it seems like the method add is not found because in test you shouldn't write code until the test gives an error, right? Then we again go and write the add method and we again run test. Then it gives an error like expected 12 got null. So because we haven't implemented the logic for that function. And then we finally write that logic and yes, the test is passed. This is how it works. This is what we all are learning, testing calculators. But when we go into real world, this doesn't work. In real world, you have to test some use cases like you have to upload an image to an S3, then fire some events, push notifications to your mobile app, email to customers and stuff like that, make a network request to GitHub, log every request and stuff like that. How do you test that? How the hell should I test that with this thing? This is what we are going to get introduced with, and how do I go and test that complex stuff? That's what the problem is. What is the first test that I should write? When should I write unit test? Should I go and write integration test, or should I go and write unit test for my models? What should I write? What is the first thing that I need to approach to? That's what we all struggle with. And and that is what sucks all the passion out of the out of the testing methodology. And that's what we are going to try to see how it works today. So CakePress is an awesome blogging platform that we are going to build today, and it's a new blogging platform that is going to be launched today, and I think you all will love it, and you should always go and basically sign up for it, post your blogs and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do today is we are going to start developing an application in TDD way using Cake PHP, right? So what we are going to build today is basic blogging platform. I don't think we will be able to complete the whole platform, but we will at least get to a use case wherein we will be able to write some tests to see whether an user can read a blog or post a blog or stuff like that. So that's what we are going to do. And I'm going to do a live demo. So I wasn't going to do a live demo, but Mark's story motivated me, like, do a live demo. I killed it off in my workshops for 2 days. You can definitely do it. And then, okay, man, I'm going to do it. And that's what I'm going to do today. So let's go to a live demo and hope it works. Okay. And excuse me. It's not showing on the screen. So I moved Sublime to that screen, but I want to type in. Sorry? Yeah, he's doing that. Okay, so what I have here is a blank Cake PHP application. There are only 2 commands that I've run. I've installed a brand new Cake PHP application using Composer, and then I have installed the PHP unit package. That's the only 2 commands that I have run here, and nothing else, okay? So what we're going to do now is we are going to start writing tests and build step by step using TDD, the CakePress application. So the first thing that always comes to is like, what is the first test that I should write? Should I write a unit test? Should I write integration test? Should I write a feature test? What is that? What is the test that I should write? I'm sorry. Okay. So what is the first test that I should write? The problem is, we all think we should write with, should I define a route first or should I write a test first? But the thing that we need to do is, we need to first list down the features that our application has, and then decide what is the first test. Yeah, sure. Is this fine? Is this fine? Yep. Great. So we need to first list down the features that we are going to include in this application, and then decide what is the first test that we should write. So in a blogging platform, what are the typical features that we will have? The first feature that is the most important to a blogging platform is reading articles. Any user should be able to read articles, right? But for an user to be able to read articles, they also need to be able to post articles. Someone needs to be able to post articles. And for someone to be able to post articles, they need to first be able to log in into the system. And for someone to be able to log in into the system, they need to have a functionality for registering to the system. So these are all the things that we need to be there in our application to actually have the feature of reading articles. And then we get into this loop, like I really want to have a feature where the user should be able to read articles, but then I have to do a feature where the user should also be able to post articles, and to do that, then log in and register functionality. So in the real world, what we do, we first develop the functionality of registration and login, and then we develop a functionality of posting articles, and then the core functionality of feature of reading articles is developed by us. So it goes into very extensive loop, and we all lose motivation there. So this is what we need to avoid. We can start here. If this is the core feature of our application, this is where we should start. We shouldn't start at registering feature. So let's not do any of these features. This is what we are going to start writing first. Now TDD, the basic thing of TDD is to write the test first and then go and define whatever code you need to do. Do not write a single line of code, but let your tests guide to write your code. So let's go and write our first line of code. In a Cake PHP application, there is a tests directory, and in that test directory you can see all these folders: fixtures, test case. Then in test case you have controllers, model, and view folder, where you can actually keep their typical tests. But what I feel is it's too opinionated, and I like to go away from that. The first thing that I do in my application is delete all these folders. I don't like too much clutter here. So the first thing I will do is delete the controller folder, model folder, and the view folder. I will use them whenever I need to use them. I don't think that they are necessary right now, and it forces too much opinions on me, and I don't want to get into opinions in my first test itself. So all the default files that are provided, I delete it. I just don't want to use them. And then, what is the first test now that we should write? Reading articles is the feature. So the first test should accompany that a user should be able to view articles. That's the first test that should be. It should be an integration test. Don't go into thinking, I need to create a model first, I need to create a route first, and all that stuff. Don't think about that. Think what your user wants to do. Your user wants to read an article, and that's what my first test should be. So let's create a new test. So our test should be, I like to arrange them into an integration folder. That makes me more comfortable, like this is an integration test, this is a unit test, rather than arranging them into controllers and models and views. So when I start with integration, my test name will be view article test. And this is what my test name is. Let's start writing. Okay, I need to first define some things. So the default namespace, sorry for my English, app test, test case, and integration. Let's define our class. So what's the name of class? It's the same view article test, and it will extend the integration test class. Let's import that, and we will get rid of this constructor here. Okay. Now this is our first test. Let's write our first test. In PHP unit, you can write your test using multiple ways. So the first way is you can append the test keyword to your function name, or you can simply have an annotation here, and then you can skip the test keyword. So anything that you're comfortable with. Personally, I like to have the annotation in place. It keeps my tests clear, it keeps my files clear. That's what I do. And I don't try to write all the test names. I have a little Sublime snippet here. So this is what I do. I use a Sublime snippet where it will sort out my annotations and the basic name of the function. So any test starts with what the user wants to do. That's how my integration tests are defined. So what we want to do, user can view article, right? That's what my test is. But not only view articles, we also need that user can only view published articles. The user shouldn't be able to view any unpublished article. So we'll write that. However big your test name is, it doesn't matter. Just make sure that it describes your use case. Oh, I have no subscription. So yeah, you'll see that a lot often in my thing. So yeah. Okay, so user can view published articles. Try to write your test names as long as possible because they serve as documentation for your code. And so how should we write test? How should we write our first test? Basically, for writing any test, there are 3 steps. You need to first arrange, then you need to act, and then you need to assert. These are the 3 steps that you should always follow in writing any test. So let's first arrange our whole test environment. In arrange step, we arrange every data that is required for making this test successful, setting up the whole environment to make this test successful. So let's arrange our test. So what do we require? In arrange step, we require that an article should be present in the database for this test to work, right? So let's create an article. So we'll boot up our model. And then it's a bit, sorry. So this is common cake PHP syntax. Nothing new for you all guys and girls. So this is the next step is defining what all fields are there in this article. So if you see here, we are trying to define how our database should work, what all fields in our database should be. We haven't defined a migration, we haven't defined a route, we haven't defined a model. But in our test, we are defining, we are documenting what our database should contain, what our articles table should contain. So let's go and define that. So what are the typical fields in an article? So every article has a title, right? So our title is Cakefest is awesome, as always. Next, every article has a body. You all are looking very strange to me. And then every article has an author. So in a real world application, you would create a foreign key relationship here, but as we have very less time today, I will go as a string for this. So the awesome Viraj. And then we have a published flag. So this also you can do in 2 ways. The first one is you can actually have this as a datetime field, and you can put it as a null or a datetime whenever the post is published or the article is published. Another way is to simply have it as a boolean. For the sake of this example, we will go ahead with a boolean. And anything else? I think this is enough. The last 2 fields are created and modified fields. And yeah. Next, we will save the article. Yeah. So this is what we need in our arrange step. Nothing else is required in our arrange step. Next, we need to act. So what happens in act step is basically what a user is going to do in real world. That is what we want to replicate here. So what is an user going to do? User is going to click a link or an URL, and then that user is going to see an article which they can read. So that's what we need to reflect here. So what we would do is get articles. So see how we are designing our API here. We are designing what the route should look like, what the database fields should be there. So what the route should look like for this article, it should be something like this. This is what I will just take this out for now. Okay. So this is what our slug should look like. We are defining that we require an article to be fetched by a slug and not by an ID. We are defining the whole API here. And then we are asserting. That is in assert step, we are verifying whether the action that user is performing, the application is giving the right response or not. So let's do our assert step. So we will assert response contains. So what all we require in that view? So the first thing that we require is obviously the title of our article. The next thing that we require is the author name. And the last thing, body obviously. You all are still looking strange to me. And we will also assert that the response gave what you say 200 status, so assert response okay. This is it. So we are complete with our first test. We have arranged our environment and data, we have acted upon it, and we have also wrote our assertions. So let's now run this test. There are a couple of ways to do that. One way is to, the basic way that you can do is, okay, tell me if when it's visible properly. Yeah, it's good? Yeah, great. So the first thing is, when you install PHP unit, you can run it with vendor. If you are in locally and not globally, you can basically run through your vendor folder. This is, oh sorry. Why? Nope. And other ways, like I have a helper here. Okay, it runs. I will check why it's not running through vendor. I need to check that. But yeah, this is one thing. I have a shortcut in my Sublime snippet which basically runs the test which I am in. So my cursor is in this test. So I have a Sublime setup already which runs only this test and not other tests that are present in other files. So this is what helps me, because I want to concentrate on the test that I am running right now and not get bothered with all the other tests. That I do frequently when I complete my workflow for one test. So I have a basic plugin. So it runs the test and it gives an error. The first error that is gives that table registry is not found. So this is a simple mistake. We need to import that class. And now once we run it, we get another error. So the next error is cakepress.articles.test doesn't exist. So yeah. So what it tries to do is that your table cakepress.articles is not present, right? So we need to create that table. We need to create a migration. But no, we don't create a migration right now. We will create a fixture first. So fixtures are these classes in Cake PHP which you can use to have dummy data in place, to load up tables and delete tables. So how fixtures work is, whenever a test is run, all the tables that are defined in that fixtures are basically created, the data is loaded, whatever data you load through your test, that is also loaded, then all your tests are run, and then those tables are truncated and dropped. So it basically, how this works is the tables in that fixtures are utilized for that one single test and nothing else. And it helps us to have a dummy database in place to test all our functionalities. So we'll import some fixtures here. So we need an articles fixture, and let's run our test again and see what our test gives. So it says that the fixture is not at all present. So the first thing that we need to do is basically create a fixture. So let's create our fixture. We'll use Bake, the awesome Bake tool we have. And I want it from schema. I want to import the schema. I don't want to explicitly define the fields in my fixture. So I'm just with the -s flag, I'm saying that I want to import the schema from the model itself and not have it explicitly defined in the fixture. And once I run this, it will give me an error. This was expected. So it says that cakepress_prod.articles doesn't exist. So the reason it's giving an error is because for a fixture to work, the articles table should be already present in the database. So that's how the fixture will work. So what I would do now is I would now go and create a migration. So what I'm doing here is I'm letting my tests guide me to what to do my next step, and I'm not going in advanced stuff and writing something beforehand. So let's go and create our migration. So we will create an articles migration. And what all things we need? We need a title, we need a slug, then we need a body, we need a published flag, boolean, then we need a created and modified field. Anything else? Yeah, that's it. Bake migration, okay. Sorry? We'll add that in our file. Sorry. Let's take this here. and basically make this as author. Looks good. Yeah. So let's run our migrations. And the table should be created. Yep, it's done. So let's now go back and run our test. Let's see what happens there. Oops. Where am I? Oh, we did create a fixture, right? Oh no, yeah, it got an error, sorry. I missed that. Okay, now let's create a fixture. Our fixture is created, and let's now again run our test. Now we get a different error. So the error that I'm getting now is slug doesn't have a default value. If you all are aware, what we have done here is we have created an article object here, but we haven't defined a value for the slug field, right? Because the slug field should be created automatically. We don't want our user to enter the slug for their blog. The slug should be created automatically. And that's some logic that we need to write into our models when the event is fired, when the save event is fired, right? So this is how my test is guiding me that the slug field needs to have a default value. Now, to make that happen, I need to write some code in the model, but that is very specific to the model. And this is when I go and pivot to an unit test, because I need to write code for a specific functionality in a model which is not related to, which is not in itself an integration use case. So I go and pivot to an unit test now for the articles model. So let's create, now I wait here, I get out of this integration test, and I go and write an unit test for testing whether the model is saving a slug field by default. So let's go and create a new unit test here. So let's again do this. Again, the names, I create the directories and the classes whenever I need them, and I keep their names very explicit to what they do. So unit / articles test.php, that's it. Let's namespace it. Case unit class articles test, and it will now extend the test case class and not the integration test class. The cake test suit test case class will get rid of this constructor. Now what should the test be? In our integration test, it was an integration with user, like an interaction with user. So we had user can, we can have a test like user can, but this is an unit test. It is not necessary an interaction with user. So I tend to use my unit test like only can, like the model can, or whatever the class is, it can do something, right? So the name of this test is can get slug, as simple as that. Whatever we are trying to test it, I try to test the name, get the name of that test in a similar fashion, so that it, whenever I come back after a couple of years maybe, or a month or 6 months, I need to understand what this test exactly does. It shouldn't be like it will do this and this and this and this. No, if there is an and, you need to split your test. Always make sure that your tests are concentrated on one simple functionality, that's it. So this is can get slug. We can use some of our code from our integration test class. So I will just get these things and go and paste them in here. I will import the table registry. So we have created an article here. The next thing is we need to test whether we can get a slug, right? So now we will assert equals. So what I need to equal is, what is the expected thing? It's cake fest is awesome, and then it should be in the article slug parameter. So this is a unit test. I'm not exactly interacting with the user, so I'm just testing the model output. That's what I'm doing. So let's run this test and see what happens. What is the error that we get? So the error that we get is again articles table not found, because we haven't imported any fixtures here. So let's go and import some fixtures here. App.articles, and let's run this test again. and field slug doesn't have a default value. So we are again back to our original error. So now let's go and implement this. So for this to work, we need to have an articles model, and we don't have an articles model right now. So let's go and bake an article model. So bake model articles. I don't want any test of article itself. Basically, when you bake a model articles, it will create a test directory for models and put in the articles, the default article stub test. I don't want that test with me, so I will have a no test flag, and I will just create it. Do you want to override the fixture? No, I don't want to override the fixture, and yep, it's done. So if we see, where is my source thing? Okay. So articles table. Now what we need to have here is we need to add a sluggable behavior here. So this is the timestamp behavior is by default added. There is no sluggable behavior, but we need to add that sluggable behavior, right? So I have that code ready. I think the time is less, so I will just copy paste the sluggable behavior code with me, which I have with me. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to add a sluggable behavior. So bake behavior sluggable. And I don't want a test for my behavior as well, so I baked it, and I will just copy paste this code in my behavior. So this is the sluggable behavior, and this is it. I have my test in it. I will just go and import it into my articles model. That's it. So if everything is fine, our test should pass. Fingers crossed, and yes, it's passing. So we have implemented our slug functionality. So whenever a new article is saved, our slug is automatically created and our test is passing. So now let's go back to our integration test and see whether that test is passing or what error do we get there. So I'm now running this test, and what I see here is assert response okay. So okay. Oh, okay. Mark told me that you will make a lot of spelling mistakes. So yeah. Okay, so let's run it again. And okay. If you see this, there is some error, but we are not really understanding what that error is. It is something like failed asserting that 404 is equal to 204, or it is less than 204. I mean, what does that mean exactly? Yeah, I mean, it's something related to status code. But what is the exact problem in my code that is causing this error? That is the thing that we are not understanding. Before that, we used to get to know, okay, articles fixture is not present, or articles model is not present, you don't have a table. We were getting very specific errors. But here we are not getting very specific errors. The reason for that is, whenever an exception is thrown, Cake handles it renders with its default exception renderer, and for that it doesn't show the exact error, the exception trace in this terminal, and I'm not able to understand what that error is. So the first thing that we will make sure is to make sure that we get an exact exception rendering. So for that I use a helper in my Cake PHP application to overwrite my exception renderer only for some specific test, and not in the app, in the configuration directory, not for all the tests, only for the tests that I want. So let's create that, a new exception renderer. So in our source directory, I will create a new class with the name test exception renderer. No typos, I hope so. Yeah, great. And again, we will put up some basic things: namespace, app, error, class, test, exception, and it will obviously extend the it will extend the parent renderer class. Let's import that. Oh, okay. And then we need to have a constructor here, and we will take the argument as an exception class. Oh, sorry. Let's import that. And then what we need to have is, we need to default this to the parent error variable, and dollar exception, and then we need to we need to override the controller which will render the exception. We'll define that here. And what this controller will do is, it will simply throw the exception that we have caught. That's it. That's what it will do, and nothing else. I hope everything's good, no typos and stuff. Yep. So let's see if we get a very good error now. Nope. Why? Oh, okay, yeah. So I forgot one step. So the thing is, as I said, the Cake PHP has a default exception renderer, and we need to override that exception renderer. So whenever I need for some test to override my exception renderer, I will just override my config option, and here we go. Error. I had by-hearted this exception renderer, and it should be test exception renderer. Let's import this and run it again. Shit. Where? Sorry? Ah, okay. Marco didn't tell me that there will be this much typos. So let's run it again, and I think we have got a better error. So yes, now we get error that controller class articles is not found. This was the actual error that was triggering my tests to fail. Now we need to go and create our controller, right? So let's go and do that. Bake controller articles. Again, we don't want a test for it, and we have it. So let's go and again run my tests, and the next error that we get is cakefist is awesome is not a function, right? Because by default, how cake works, it takes the action as the method parameter, right? And it is not getting it. So we need to change our routes as well. We don't want our controller to have that method. It doesn't look like. So let's go and define our routes. I will clear this off. I basically clear most of the default things that I get here. It's just my way of coding. I don't like to be opinionated much. So let's create a route. So what is the route that we wanted? We defined is articles / slug, right? And then what is the controller that it should work with? It should be with articles controller, and the action should be view. Plus we need to pass the slug parameter, and I think it's good. Oh, a semicolon here. And let's see, we have defined our controller, we have defined our route. So let's go and run our tests again. Now we get another error, which is record not found in article. So basically we are creating a record, but it is not getting that record in the articles, and that's because our articles controller, we had baked our controller, right? So by default it is getting through ID, and we are trying to access it through slug. So we now need to change our logic to actually access it through slug. So let's change this here, and I don't want this. I will use a find by method. So find by slug, and I only want the first record. Sorry, I think it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. So let's go and run our tests again, and the next error that we get is the view is not there. So see, our tests are guiding what is the next step that I should do, and it doesn't feel like it's unproductive. It is actually feeling that I'm doing something which is it guides me in a good way. So let's create our view. let's first try echoing out only the art title and see if it works. Let's go here and run our test again. So yes, no, yes, no. Yeah, yeah, okay, sorry. It's right. So it is giving an error that the awesome Viraj is not found. So it is actually an author name. So it is bypassing the title test. If you see the assertion here, the assert response okay has passed. The title assertion is also passed because we have echoed out the title assertion, but it is failing here basically because we have not echoed out the author and body of that article. So let's do that, and I hope that the test will basically pass. And let's go here. And yes, yay, we have passed our first test. Now let's go forward. If you observe carefully, our test said that user can view a published article, and we haven't written a code to fetch only published article. We are fetching any code, any article that the slug is passing. We are not specifically fetching a published article. So you see, we do not write code unless and until our test guides us to write that specific piece of code. So the next test that we need to write is that user cannot view an unpublished article. So let's go and quickly write the test for that. Published article, and we can basically take help of this here to do up till here. Yeah. Ding-da. Great. So up till this, the arrange and act step are gonna be the same. The step that is going to be different is going to be the assert step, right? So what should be there in the assert step? The assert step should have something like this: assert response status. If an article is unpublished, it basically doesn't exist for the system, right? So we need to make sure that the test that we are our application throws a 404 error if an article is an unpublished article. One more thing that we need to change is we need to change the published flag to false. So let's run this test and see what happens. Sorry. Okay, so the error that we are getting is we are actually getting a 200 status, which is a success status, but we want a 404 status, right? So let's go and modify our code to actually have only those articles which are published and published. So we only want to have the articles which are published. So slug comma true flag, that I only want article which are basically published and I don't want any other article. I think this would work or not. And no, it wouldn't. It's still giving an error because the reason it is giving an error is we are taking the first thing, but we are nowhere firing an exception. It is basically loading a view with a blank object, with an empty object, and it is trying to load those variables. So we need to explicitly check that whether an article is present, is fetched, and if it is not fetched, we should throw an exception. And then the framework is good enough. In your production environment, you will be having your 404 views already created, where that 404 page will be automatically rendered. So let's import this class, and if everything goes fine, we are okay. We should pass. Nope, we are not passing. What? Oh, sorry. Yay, we are done. And if we, now this is only for that test. If we want to run the whole test suite, I'm running the whole test suite. We have 3 tests and 12 assertions, and we are complete with our 2 tests. So a user can publish an article, a user can view only published articles, and if a user tries to view an unpublished article, that user is not able to do that. So if you find the general overflow, so I am seeing the time, I think I cannot go with any more examples, but we can surely discuss. But if you see overall workflow, it's something like we start with we always are taught that we should start inside out. Like we should first try to write an unit test and then grow to writing an integration test and then to some other feature test or some other type of integration test. But I really don't like that. It feels like we have to do a lot of thinking for that. Rather than that, we can have an outside-in approach where we first understand what feature we need in our application, and let's start with that. Let's write an integration test for that feature. Then whenever we are stuck with for implementing a unit feature, we pivot and write that unit test. We make that test pass, again come back to our integration test and try making it pass. Again we get stuck, we again go back and write an unit test, make it pass, and again come back to an integration test. So this basically feels like you are actually developing something. It feels like your tests are guiding your code, your design, the what route you should define, what database fields you should have, what is the logic that you need in your controller. And not a single line of your code is basically untested. You don't do you first write code and then write test. So when you do that, your code remains untested. But when you use this approach, it will be most of the times that your code is always 100% tested. It makes sure that your code is 100% tested, right? So let's go back to our presentation. How should I bring that? Oops. I will just... Okay, so this is where we were. We have completed our live demo. Just there are few things to remember. The first thing is, if writing tests is hard, it might be a bug. It might be a bug in your code. It might be a bug in your approach. It might be a bug in how you're writing or defining your classes, your objects, your whole business logic. So if you're feeling that writing test is hard using this approach as well, then there is a slight case that you might not be doing the right thing. You might not be designing your code well. So when you are thinking about what to test what you would manually test. Just imagine if I wanted to check whether this user is going to read a blog. What would you test in browser? You would go and open the URL, put in the URL in the browser, and you enter. And if you see the page without any errors, that's what you check. Yeah, this is working. So that's what you need to write in those tests. If you are confused what to test, just imagine what you would test in a real life scenario using your browser and write a test for that. That's good enough to go. That's what most of our applications need. You are not creating products for Apple, you are not creating products for Tesla, or most of us are not creating products for aeroplanes as well where people are going to die. So these tests are enough. Test output and avoid side effects. So side effects as in, what do I exactly mean by side effects? So if you're writing a test and in the meantime, that code is creating some changes in in a relatively other code in some other tables which is totally unrelated to that test, then there is a problem in your code. You need to avoid side effects. If your code is tested, but it is also generating any changes in very other parts of your application, that is not what you should aim for. You should test for the output and not for the side effects. Refactor. Why do we write test? It is because every time we write test, we get to see our output in our browser itself. When are tests useful? Tests are useful when you refactor. In 6 months, in 1 year, you need to upgrade your application to next version. You need to change some functionality. At that time, the tests prevent you from breaking any changes. So refactor your application and have tests in place to be able to make sure that you don't break your application. So that's what was from my side. I'm Viraj Khatavkar. I'm from Mumbai, India. So I come a long way, and I had a very good cake fest this year with you. And so how do I make money? What do I earn? How do I earn? So I'm a consultant, and I help you make more money off your website. So suppose you're a freelancer or an agency and you're not getting enough leads from your website, then I'm the man to go. I'm actually hosting an online conference this year, very specific to freelancers and agencies. So it's a BIS conference, it's not a technical conference, and it's an online conference. You don't need to come anywhere. If you're a freelancer or an agency and you want to help your business grow, if you want to know how to grow your clients and stuff, just go to this URL and register for this conference. Tickets are very cheap. Plus, I was very motivated yesterday by Ed's talk and the way Larry is matching the donations and stuff. So I have, like, it was a prompt decision yesterday. I'm going to donate 10% of all the amount of ticket sales to OSMI flat. That's it. As a speaker, I really look forward to feedback from you guys, as you all were like very strange to me today. So if you could write your feedback on this, just go on this link and put some comments. You were like, you bored us, you wasted our time, 1 hour and stuff like that. Just go and write it. Give me good feedback so that I can improve this talk and stuff. And thank you. That's it. So if anybody has any questions. And these are some little thank you cards which Megan and sorry, I don't know your name. Sorry? So these were made by my girlfriend and they are handcrafted. I was very embarrassed, like, should I give this? Should I not give this? And yeah, so I said, okay, let's try it out. I really cannot say no. Great. So if anybody has any questions, just shoot them up, or else I will just... Oh, everybody's reading the cards. She took all the attention of me. I think I did a very terrible job. I don't know. Means I was when I was actually practicing this stuff at my home and hotel, I was like not able to practice it. Like while typing, I was not at all able to talk. But I don't know how I did it today. It was like, Mark is my motivation. Yeah. Sorry. Fast improvement from your talk last year. Yeah. I will repeat it in next year as well. So please select me next year as well. I would like to come to Tennessee.
You want to come to Tennessee?
One comedy that I want to share. Okay, you have a question?
Yeah, it's not so much a question. I just wanted to add a little side note. So first, a great demo. When you were doing this little hack to print out the exception message, we already started to discuss this in our developer channel,
okay.
and now trying to fix that.
Okay.
So if you have any errors, we are really, really glad to help you. And yeah, we definitely care about the stuff. So thanks for bringing it up.
Sure, no problem. That's great. Anything else? Then I will wrap it up. Great.